Hi there. This is the third in our series of multiple choice question revision videos to help AQA A Level Business students test their knowledge of the specification ahead of the exams. Multiple choice questions, of course, appear in paper 1. In the first sitting of paper 1 in 2017, the average score was just under 10 out of 15, so not bad, but some questions harder than others. So if you can get 10 or more, you're going to be doing well. This session is going to be using a thing called a two-statement format question. It appeared twice in the June 2017 papers, and one of those wasn't well answered at all. It's quite a tricky format of question because it enables the exam board to cover and test a lot of the specification, as we'll see. So let's have a go at practicing these questions. There are going to be 15 questions, and in this video we're just drawing content from the first year of teaching, sections 3.1 to 3.6 of the specification. 15 questions using this two-statement format. As we go through them, once I've set the question, pause the video and have a go, leave yourself a minute or so to have a go at the question, and then resume the video to see whether or not you got it right. And I'll try to provide a brief explanation as to why the answer is the way it is. As with all of our sessions, keep your own score. Can you get 10 or more? These are two-statement format questions, so the answers A, B, C and D will always be the same. What you have to do is to work your way through the two statements and decide whether each is true or false. Answering A if both are true, answering B if the first is true but statement 2 is false, answering C if the first statement is false but the second statement is true, or answer D if both statements are false. So the answers will always be the same. The question is, can you pick out the right combination of true and false? Okay, here we go. Let's start. Question 1. Statement 1. An increase in fixed costs will lower the break-even output of a business. Statement 2. An increase in variable cost per unit will increase the contribution per unit of a product. Pause the video and have a go. Okay, let's take a look at what the answer is. Well, statement 1, an increase in fixed costs will actually increase the break-even output of a business. So that's not correct. The whole idea of break-even output is for contribution to cover the fixed costs. If fixed costs are higher, then you'll need to sell more, make more in order to break even. Statement 2, that is also false. An increase in variable cost per unit will decrease the contribution per unit of a product. Don't forget, contribution per unit of a product is revenue or selling price per unit less the variable costs per unit. So the answer is D. Both statements are false. Let's have a go at question 2. Statement 1. Shareholders are the owners of a private limited company. Statement 2. Shares in a private limited company may not be bought or sold. Pause the video and have a go. And if you've had a go at that question, let's take a look. Statement 1. Well, that's true. Shareholders are the owners of a private limited company. They own the business. Statement 2. Shares in a private limited company, well, that's not true. They may be bought or sold. You can buy and sell shares in a private company, not on a public stock market, but oftentimes shares in private companies are bought and sold. So statement 2 is false. Therefore, the answer is B. Moving on to question 3. Statement 1. In the Blake and Mouton grid, a manager with a country club style has a low concern for people and a high concern for task. Statement 2. According to the Tannenbaum and Schmidt continuum, an autocratic leader is most likely to tell rather than delegate. Pause the video and see if you can get the right combination of true and false. And if you had a go, hopefully you've determined that firstly statement 1 is false. A manager with a country club style has a high concern for people and a relatively low concern for task. It's the other end of the grid. Statement 2, however, is true. Tannenbaum-Schmidt continuum of leadership and management styles has the autocratic leader at the left-hand side of the continuum. much more likely to tell people what to do rather than to delegate. So the correct answer is C. And on the screen there, I just put a reminder of those two models. This is an example of a two-statement question that can test two models at the same time. So look out for these. Well, hopefully you got that one right. Let's try question 4 now. Statement 1. An authoritarian leadership style is likely to be effective when quick decisions are required by a business. Statement 2. A democratic leadership style emphasises two-way communication and contributions from subordinates. Pause the video, choose your combination. And starting the video again, let's see how we got on. Well, statement 1 is true. That's often the case that when a business needs quick decision making, an authoritarian leadership style is likely to be effective, less need for consultation and debate. Often when the business is in trouble, it's often said that that's the best or the most appropriate situation for authoritarian leadership. No guarantee that will work, of course. Statement 2 is also true. Yeah, that's a feature of democratic leadership style. It very much is a question of encouraging a two-way communication flow up and down the organisational hierarchy, and very much contributing and welcoming contributions from subordinates. So both statements are true, therefore the answer is A. Question 5. Statement 1. Primary market research can be both qualitative and quantitative in nature. Statement 2. Secondary market research is only quantitative in nature. Pause the video, work out which of those statements is true and or false. How do we get on? Let's have a look. Statement 1. Well, statement 1 is true. Primary research can be both qualitative, i.e. about the views and opinions of those who are being researched, as well as quantitative. Quantitative is all about data, extracting data. For example, a focus group could very much, well, it's designed to give you qualitative research. Similarly, a survey, primary market research survey, could very much be designed to give you data as well as opinions. Statement 2, however, is false. Secondary research can be both quantitative as well as qualitative. Secondary research is really defined as being research that was prepared for a different purpose. It's not defined in terms of what type of content it contains. So statement 2 is false, therefore the answer is B. Question 6. Statement 1. Extrapolation can be used to forecast marketing data by using a direct relationship between two factors. Statement 2. Extrapolation can be used to forecast marketing data by using historical data and established trends. Have a think, work out your answer, and then start the video again when you're ready. And we're back again. Hopefully you've had a go at that one. Well, statement 1 is false. Extrapolation, direct relationship between two factors, well, that is actually describing correlation, not extrapolation, so that's false. Statement 2, however, well, that's true, isn't it? That is almost a good definition of extrapolation, the use of historical data and established trends to forecast marketing data, perhaps looking at the sales growth trend and then extrapolating that forward over a number of years under different scenarios to give you a sales forecast. So statement 2 is true, therefore the answer is C. Moving on to question 7. Statement 1. Price leadership is more likely to be used as a pricing strategy by a business with a strong brand and established market share. Statement 2. Penetration pricing is more likely to be used as a pricing strategy by a business wanting to establish itself in a new market. What do you think? Which of those are true, which of those are false? Or both? Have a go. And we're back. Let's see how we got on here. Well, price leadership, yes, that is very much likely to be a pricing strategy used by a business that is well established, a strong brand, an established and possibly leading market share. Businesses like Apple, they very much lead on price. They're not too concerned about what competitors are charging. Statement 2 is also true. Penetration pricing, the use of a low price in order to gain a foothold in the market, is a classic pricing strategy for a business that wants to establish itself in a new market. No guarantee it will work, but it's often the strategy that is likely to be used. So the answer is A, both statements are true. Moving on to question 8. Statement 1. An increase in capacity utilisation by a business indicates that the maximum possible output has risen. Statement 2. An increase in capacity utilisation by a business is likely to result in high unit costs if fixed costs stay the same. So pause the video, think that one through carefully, and then resume the video when you've got your answer. Okay, let's take a look. This is a tough one, and of course it requires understanding as to how capacity utilisation is calculated. Remember the formula. Statement 1 is false. An increase in capacity utilisation doesn't increase that the maximum output has risen. Maximum possible output is the bottom part of the calculation of capacity utilisation. It doesn't suggest that at all. It simply suggests that an increasing percentage of the output has been used. Perhaps output has increased, not the maximum possible output. So statement 1 is false, and indeed statement 2 is also false. An increase in capacity utilisation is more likely to result in lower unit costs if fixed costs stay the same, because an increase in capacity utilisation would imply higher output spread over the same fixed costs, therefore unit costs should fall. So the answer is D. Have a go now at question 9. Statement 1. The successful introduction of just-in-time management should result in lower levels of inventory held as a buffer. Statement 2. The successful introduction of just-in-time management should result in higher reorder levels with suppliers of inventory. Quite a tough one, this one, so pause the video, think it through and work out what you think the answer is. And hopefully you've had a go at that. Let's have a look. Statement 1. Well, yeah, that's true. That is a feature of just-in-time management, a method of lean production. One of the benefits of lean production, if achieved through just-in-time management, is that you should be able to hold lower levels of inventory held as a buffer, held in case of emergency or a late delivery by a supplier. So that's true. And statement 2, well, that's not correct. The introduction of just-in-time should result in lower reorder levels. You don't need to reorder at a high level of inventory. You can afford to allow your inventory to be pretty low. In fact, in many cases, almost zero for just-in-time. The idea there is that your inventory arrives just as you need it. Okay, so the answer there, B is false. Statement 1 is true. Statement 2 is false. Statement 1 is true. Therefore, the answer is B. So we're moving on now to question 10 out of the 15. Question 10. Statement 1. A business uses finance raised by issuing new shares to repay long-term liabilities. This will increase the firm's gearing ratio. Statement 2. A business obtains a long-term loan to buy new fixed assets. This will increase the firm's gearing ratio. Pause the video and work out whether statements 1 and 2 are true or false. Now, this is a tough one. Gearing is all about the proportion of finance that is represented by non-current liabilities, things like long-term loans. Statement 1, let's have a look. Well, if you used finance by issuing new shares to repay long-term liabilities, that is going to reduce your non-current liabilities. So the top half of the calculation of gearing goes down, the bottom half actually stays the same, but that will reduce the firm's gearing ratio. So statement 1 is false. What about statement 2? A long-term loan is obtained to buy new fixed assets. Well, yes, that's going to increase the gearing ratio, isn't it? So that's going to increase non-current liabilities on the top half of the calculation of the formula. So statement 2 is true. There we go. There's just a reminder of the formula for calculating the gearing ratio. If something increases the top part of the calculation, even if the same number is added to the bottom part, it will increase the ratio, and vice versa. Question 11, we're doing well, almost there. Question 11, here are your two statements. Statement 1, a business uses debt factoring to improve its cash flow. This is likely to lead to a reduction in its receivables days ratio. Statement 2, a business uses sale and leaseback to improve its cash flow. This is likely to lead to an increase in its payables days ratio. Have a think, pause the video, start again when you've got your answer. Okay, how do we get on? First one, statement 1, debt factoring to improve cash flow will reduce receivables days ratio. Well, yeah, that's true. That's what it's there for. Debt factoring is where you sell your receivables to a factoring business, often run by a bank. They give you the cash, therefore you no longer have the receivables, you have the cash, but the bank keeps a cut and they go away and collect the debt. But it very much does improve cash flow as well as reduce receivables days. Statement 2 is simply false. There's no reason why sale and leaseback to improve cash flow should reduce payables days ratio. Sale and leaseback is just a way of improving cash flow, nothing to do really with payables. So statement 1 is true, statement 2 is false, therefore the answer is B. Now this next question, question 12, is a real toughie. This is hard. I would guess that 25% of people will get this right, which is about the same percentage of those who might guess. So read it through carefully, have a go. Statement 1, a favourable cost variance occurs when actual costs are higher than budgeted costs. Statement 2, a favourable revenue variance occurs when budgeted revenues are lower than actual revenues. A tough one. So pause the video, think it through carefully, and see if you can work out the correct combination. Okay, let's go through this very carefully, because this is a tricky one and students often are confused by variances and what's the difference between favourable and the alternative, which is adverse. Well, the way to remember variances is if it's good news for the business, that's a favourable variance. So favourable is good news, and that happens in 3 situations, doesn't it? Costs are lower than budget, profit is higher than budget, revenues are higher than budget. And similarly, an adverse variance happens if it's bad news for the business. So let's look at these two statements. We're told that actual costs are higher than budget costs. That's bad news for the business. Actual cost higher than budget, therefore that's an adverse cost variance. So statement 1 is false. What about statement 2? Well, we're told that budgeted revenues are lower than actual. Tricky. Turn it round. That means that actual revenues are higher than budget. And if actual revenues are higher than budget, that must be good news, which means that it's a favourable revenue variance. So statement 2 is true. Therefore, the answer is C. Almost there now. 3 questions to finish off with, based around human resource management. Statement 1. A business can reduce labour costs by changing to a flatter organisational structure with wider spans of control. Statement 2. A business can increase worker empowerment by changing to a flatter organisational structure with wider spans of control. Have a think, pause the video, start when you're ready. Okay, statement 1. Well, that's true. Absolutely. A flatter organisational structure with wider spans of control means fewer layers of the hierarchy and fewer managers required. And that absolutely is why so many businesses these days are trying to operate with a flatter organisational structure. One big benefit of that is to reduce labour costs by having fewer expensive middle and senior managers. So statement 1 is true. As 2 is statement 2. That's also true. it is the case if you move to a flatter organisational structure, wider spans of control, that increases worker empowerment. It almost forces a business to empower its workers to a greater degree than it was before. So both are correct, therefore the answer is A. Penultimate question now, well done if you're still with us. Question 14. Statement 1. In a centralised organisational structure, decision making is made at the top of the organisational hierarchy. Statement 2. In a decentralised organisational structure, greater use is made of delegation. Pause the video, work out your combination to get to the answer. Okay, let's take a look. Well, statement 1, yeah, that's true. A key feature of centralised decision making is that decisions are made from the centre, i.e. at the top, by the most senior management, by the board, by the executive directors, the CEO, at the top of the organisational hierarchy. That's a feature of centralised decision making. And statement 2 is also true. As you decentralise, as you pass responsibility further down and around the organisational structure, much greater use is made of delegation away from the centre. That's the idea of decentralised decision making. A great feature and possibly a benefit of that is that you can see wider use of delegation. So they're both true, therefore the answer is A. How are you getting on? If you've been keeping your score, you'll have a feel for how you're getting on so far out of 14. Don't forget paper 1, 15 questions. Here's the last one for this session. Statement 1. According to Hertzberg, providing employees with a greater sense of responsibility in their jobs would motivate those employees. Statement 2. According to Taylor, providing employees with a greater sense of responsibility in their jobs would motivate those employees. Pause the video for this final question and work out which is true, which is false. And this final question on motivational theorists has one that's true and one that's false. Which way around is it? Well, statement 1 is true. Good old Hertzberg very much saw the provision of greater responsibility as a motivating factor. A factor that was more likely to provide greater job motivation rather than pay, which was seen as a hygiene factor. Had to be right, but not necessarily a motivator. Taylor, he was from a different school, wasn't he? The scientific school. His view was that it's all about pay. It's all about paying people what they produce. Wasn't a big fan of giving employees greater responsibility. So no, he didn't agree with that. So statement 2 is false. Therefore, the answer is B. There we go. We've had to go at 15 of these tricky two-statement question format questions. Oh, you're not going to get lots and lots of these in the exam, but you might easily get 2 or 3 or possibly 4. Possibly the reason being that they allow the examiners to test even more of the specification in just one question. Hopefully you did pretty well on those. Don't forget, you're trying to get as many as possible, ideally more than 10 out of 15 as you get closer to the exams. But I hope you found that useful.